All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for the Founder Spotlight featuring Regina Gwynn, the CEO and co-founder of TresseNoire. I'm Andy Saldana. I'm the Executive Director of New York Tech Alliance. Before we start, just a few quick announcements to set the stage and tell you about some upcoming events. Thank you to our sponsors, of course, and then we'll get right into the conversation. A little bit about New York Tech Alliance. We are driving access, equity, and inclusion in the New York tech community to make it the most diverse and dynamic in the world. To learn more about us, please check us out at nytech.org. Again, I'm the executive director, and you can always reach out to me at andy@nytech.org. Thank you so much to all of our wonderful annual partners that make these events possible and all of the work that we do possible. Everyone from Xander, Eisner Amper, Work Better, Nation Builder, Google, EY, all really fantastic partners in the community. If you ever want to get connected to these partners, please feel free to reach out and we're happy to make those introductions. And then a very special thank you to Grasshopper Bank for sponsoring this series, the Founder Spotlights. They do such a great job in the innovation community and are a new type of bank for the innovation community. So be sure to check them out for all of your banking needs. And they're fantastic talent of employees. And then our next upcoming events are Tuesday, December 8th, which is this upcoming Tuesday. It's our Women's Demo Night. We have a fantastic agenda full of amazing female founders showcasing their phenomenal technology. Regina was part of that event last year. I can't believe it's almost been a year. And then on Thursday, January the 7th, we're going to kick off the year with our next Founder Spotlight with Rebecca Bastian, co-founder of Own Trail. So we hope to join us there to kick off the next year. So ending the year with the Women's Demo Night, starting the year with Founder Spotlight of Rebecca Bastian. So check our events out always at nytech.org. And then with that, we are going to start the conversation today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, make sure that we all see Regina. And then Regina, it's such a pleasure to have you participate in this conversation. You're one of my favorite founders in the New York tech ecosystem. I always love interacting with you and having as many conversations as possible with you. So to kick things off, I'm going to turn it over to you, let you introduce yourself, and then and take it from there.
Okay. Well, thank you, Andy. I thoroughly enjoy working with New York Tech Alliance. Again, as you mentioned, we had our demo day or participated in the demo night this time last year, and what a difference a year makes. But I am the co-founder and CEO of TresseNoire. We make finding hair products for women of color easier by matching their unique hair profile to a beauty regimen designed by experts. And we've been up and running since 2013, but this latest product is a pivot from our original premise, which was to create the first on-demand, on-location beauty booking app that would send a traveling textured hairstylist to your house, hotel, or office to do your hair. And when we first started, our mission has always stayed the same. It is to give women back the most important resource on earth, which is time. And we tried to think through multiple ways of doing that by allowing us to find faster and easier ways to simplify the beautification process. For women of color with textured hair, there's pain points everywhere, from finding the right products to finding the right stylist, to maintaining the right hairstyles, to finding the right long-term maintenance for your hair. And so we kicked off with this on-demand, on-location beauty booking app. Definitely found success. We started off in Philadelphia, expanded to New York, and ended up with stylists in Philly, New York, Washington, DC, LA, Dallas, Texas, and Cincinnati. And so it was through that experience that I became, I guess, a tech founder, which is also a whole separate conversation. Definitely was a non-technical founder. Background in fashion and beauty prior to my entrepreneurship. But it also introduced a very large opportunity with taking the on-demand technologies that we had seen grow, like Uber and Fresh Direct and Handy and all of these other kinds of business models and apply them to a beauty and to the beauty industry. And so we kept getting so many questions from our clients. Okay, so the stylist has left. I love my hairstyle. Now what? What do I do? How do I maintain this hairstyle? How, what product should I be getting in the beauty supply store? I'm in the beauty supply store right now. Help. And so I found myself doing so many additional phone calls, whether it was me advising the clients, whether it was connecting them to our stylists, again, either before, during, and after the hairstyles, that made us discover that there was an even bigger opportunity. And this was through access of education and personalization. Every single client was different. They had a different hair type, a different hairstyle. They lived in a different location. They had different hair needs, whether it was thinning edges or split ends or dry hair or super curly hair. So there was all these different variables that I said, I was talking to my co-founder and said, wow, if we're in this tech industry and we have all of these tech tools available to us, why aren't we using all of these unique criteria to develop a more accurate system, a more accurate process? And that was the impetus behind pivoting to our virtual beauty coach app. And so now our clients can take a quiz and we gather 28 points of data to determine to determine the kind of beauty regimen that works for you. And that education is delivered through a text message. So you interact with our beauty coach via phone. And you can actually change the algorithm based off of the information you give us. So if it's raining outside, then we'll say, hey, it's raining, don't forget your umbrella. And if you change your hairstyle, then you tell us, oh, wow, I'm no longer wearing a twist out, I'm in a weave. Then, okay, we'll change the education based off of the data that the client provides. And so this pivot, we're still in private beta. We definitely have learned a ton this year in a lot of the iterations that we've been working on. But I'm really excited about kind of the long-term opportunities of providing this technology to additional beauty brands. So, the idea is to make sure that we're getting education around our specific hair journey and making that type of information available to everyone. No. So I will take a breath. I feel like I've been talking.
Absolutely.
Jumped right on in. But let me stop there.
That was a really fantastic introduction to TresseNoire and yourself as well. I've had the privilege of knowing you for quite some time and seeing you on your journey go from entering becoming an early stage entrepreneur when you were starting to build that on-demand service platform, and then seeing your journey expand into different markets with that product. And you kept coming back as a touch point to New York Tech Alliance throughout that journey. And it was really fantastic to keep track of that. And then about a year and a half ago, when we were starting to look at the Women's Demo Night, I saw your pivot. I saw that pivot happen, and I got really, really excited because you went from being just an entrepreneur that was using technology to build her product and her services to being a tech entrepreneur and building tech product. And I imagine that was a very different experience from both sides of the coin, and you learned a lot along the way. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, starting with that on-demand service platform that you provided, and kind of the lessons that you learned while you were trying to scale that business into different markets, right? Like every market is a different market. And so I'm sure you had to adapt for each market. So can you talk a little bit about what that was like building an on-demand service?
Absolutely. Building marketplaces is really hard. Building two-sided marketplaces is even harder. We are building a marketplace of stylists that can supply the demand, supply the consumer demand. And so as we started to go into each market, we had kind of like our blueprint, right? Do we gather the customers first and do the waiting list? Do we gather the stylists first so that it's available? Understanding kind of what that balance is was important as we started to go into, market number 4, 5, 6. And then What we also discovered was the difference in hairstyles. So not every stylist is knowledgeable in every hairstyle. Women of color change their hairstyles much more frequently than mainstream counterparts. And so if you find a weave specialist and you go into a market where twist outs is more popular, then your weave stylist sits on the bench, right? She's twiddling her thumbs. So understanding the nuances in the type of customer demand was something that we had to identify first in order to say, okay, this is a braids market. We need a lot of braiders. Or this is a blowout market. We need a lot of blowout and sew and weave specialists. So I think that, as we started to move forward, we realized that marketplaces are really hard. When we look at Glam Squad, when we look at other beauty booking app type models, they've been around for a little longer. I think they started in maybe 2011, maybe 2012, raised over $30 million. And to date, they're still in less than 10 markets. So when you think about that, and they've raised 30 million and I've raised less than that, it started to become very clear that there were some very inherent kind of long-term challenges that we were going to face, while identifying that there were other pain points. Our thought process was, again, we're identifying a certain segment of the market, but we're still only scratching the surface of a multi-billion-dollar ethnic hair care industry. And so what can we do that makes a larger impact, other than, solely kind of like that sliver of on-demand beauty booking?
Yeah, and so when you were building, looking at the different markets, you talk about this two-sided market. I hear this all the time from aspiring entrepreneurs. Are like, I'm going to build this marketplace and it's going to be wonderful. And it's like, you're going into a two-sided market. It's always a difficult thing because it's chicken and egg problem, right? Like, yes. do you get the talent first or do you get the consumer first, right? And so it's really hard to grow both of those markets at the same time simultaneously. And it's a point where people get discouraged quite a lot. So going back to that, as you were talking about the differences in each market, how did you do that discovery within the market, with each individual market, and how were you thinking about it, and what kind of data were you collecting to inform your decisions?
Sure. So social media is great. We have a modest, amount of followers, probably around like 10,000 across Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and they actually were the kind of the main indicators when we would, look at our audience from, in particular geographies, scroll through the pictures and see, what are women wearing in Dallas? What are women wearing in New York? What are women wearing in Austin, Texas? In LA, and you could see a very different consumer from market to market. And so I think that we took that information along with talking to our stylists. So we always had at least a few boots on the ground in any market that we went into. Between my co-founder and I, we have networks across the country. And so we always wanted to just pick up the phone and talk to a girlfriend and say, hey, look, what's going on in that area? What are the hot spots? What are the, who are the arbiters of culture in that area? And like, let's follow them. Let's watch them. Let's see, where the beauty trends are going. And then we also did just larger, like macro research, Style Seat, magazines, Essence, Elle, those types of publications also do a lot in terms of beauty trends by market. So we kind of triangulated a couple of different points of data in order for us to feel good about, going into a market with the right kinds of stylists that were going to be ready to support the demand of the kind of hairstyles that the customers were looking for.
No, that's awesome. That's really great advice. And so I think, you were building this on-demand market, and then you talk about seeing that there was still this additional need, right? That was popping up, and it wasn't just connecting to hairstylists, but how do you take care of your hair? How do you maintain? What products to use? And so, at what point were you like, oh my goodness, we need to build technology to help solve this problem, right? Like, there's not a technology out there. We can be that we can be that product. How long in your journey, and at what point were you like, oh my goodness, we need to move in this direction?
Yeah, so let's see. We started in 2013 and we pivoted in 18. Where am I? What's this? 2020?
2020.
I'm like, what year am I? This year
20,
has
it
been
feels
going
like
on for
2030,
about
right?
15, 20 years, 2020. So I think we were probably about 5 years in, maybe 5 or 6 years in, before we really, and we also looked at, again, the business model, like how are we making money? I think that's always a consideration is, what are the things that we're doing to be profitable? What are the things that we're doing to generate revenue? Would this new opportunity allow us to generate more revenue? If the answer is yes, then we should be, actively pursuing it. Because we also realized that we were being restricted, right? If we're only in 5 markets out of the hundreds of markets across the country, we would get phone calls from people in Chicago and we can't service you. We'd get phone calls from people in Miami and we can't service you. We get phone calls from people in all types of metropolitan areas across the country. And so you can only scale but so fast in the markets that you're in already, as well as, going into new ones. And so this was also really the impetus is saying that the market for this new product is bigger than the market of the product that we already have. So again, that factored into discovering like, wait a minute, if we could be looking at a larger revenue opportunity with something else, that also allows us to leverage the experience that we already have, leverage the stylists that we already have, leverage the platforms and the branding and visibility that we already have. We're not starting over, right? We're just evolving. And I think that was also part of the decision to make that pivot.
No, that's great. And I imagine, scale is always a question that we also get. Like, how do you scale? What is, how do you increase that profit margin, and what are the products that you need to get to that point? So I'm glad that you brought up that business model. It's funny because the New York Tech Meetup, when we're talking to our demoers and we're focusing on the technology, we avoid the business model question, right?
Yes.
I get to ask it when I'm doing my interviews pre-event, but at the event we really avoid it to focus on the technology. But I also understand why it's such an important part, because you're building a business, right? The whole point of the business is to make money and be profitable.
Yes.
And
yes,
so,
it is.
I imagine that, that when you started to look at that challenge of how do I gain more customers, how do I build technology to scale my expertise in my product, different issues popped up and different hurdles arose that you had to overcome. So how did that pivot really impact how you thought about building a business from on-demand to more of a tech product?
So, Andy, I will tell you, it is interesting, I guess being an entrepreneur and, your ego, right? Like I knew much more about stylists and products and, the whole, beauty styling side of the business as opposed to technology, right? So like we really had a tech enabled business because, you can pull a beauty booking app off of a shelf and customize it and say, poof, you have whatever tech you need to deliver that kind of service. Whereas now we're literally building like an algorithm from scratch, and we're using artificial intelligence and machine learning and, natural language processing. And I'm like, what? I don't know any of these things. And so it made me relied on my technical team and needing to expand my technical team in order to, to design and build this product. I had a very clear idea of what I wanted and had no idea like how to in fact get there and whether or not the approach that we were using was the most effective, the most efficient, the most accurate, and the most scalable. So I had to really rely on other people while learning myself, because I definitely didn't want to put the entire future of that product into someone else's hands. But I think that consideration, knowing that I was going to be moving into something that was much more pure tech, was very scary for me. Because just going from a place where I was very confident in what I knew to going to a place where I was not confident in what I knew, but knowing that the end result would be, I knew what good looked like. I just needed to make sure I could get there.
Yeah, I definitely hear that.
Yes.
Running a tech organization, but not being technical, it's you learn really fast what you don't know, right? And who to go for to answer the questions that you need answered. No, that's really, really fantastic to hear about how you continue to learn. One of the things that always is intriguing to me when I listen to you on other podcasts or listen to you speak, you always talk about this technical team that you're putting in place and how you had to get yourself up to speed on understanding, differences in languages and how to speak tech speak and to understand whether or not the wool was being pulled over your eyes or while you're building this business, building this business, but also learning this new skill of technology. So I was hoping that you could provide some pointers, some advice to non-technical co-founders who are looking to build a tech-enabled or a tech product.
Sure. So I still would strongly recommend getting a, technical advisor, right? Yes, they are crazy. I do see a chat in the, no shade or no negativity, but I do think you have to find a technical lead or a CTO that you trust, someone that really can help guide you through the process and explain in layman's terms, why is this platform better than this other platform, right? So, we were going through different kinds of databases. So which database is going to harbor all this data, right? Because the whole premise is you need, like I said, 28 points of data. We gather your zip code to understand where you live. Is it dry? Is it cold? Is it warm? Is it humid? Humidity for a woman of color is critical. Okay, you will have a bad hair day when the humidity is 100% in Florida, right? And there's also when it's really dry outside, you need to change your deep conditioning and change your moisture regimens when the seasons change. So again, zip code, your hair type, your hair texture, how old you are. Are you super busy? You may need a regimen that's really no frills and products that work extra harder than someone who has more time on their hands to really dedicate to a hair regimen. So it's like all these and per person, right? So this is like, tens of thousands of people that we need to be gathering this level of data for. So how are we thinking about the types of databases that can sync into our larger platform? So we do use Google Cloud. We use Firebase and we use, oh my goodness, I'm missing I can't remember the name of it right now, but we use Firebase and we use the whole Google Cloud suite in order to power our product and to power the platform. And then we have APIs that sync into Bitly. When we send the client a recommendation, hey, you should try this, then when you click on that link, it'll send you to our Amazon affiliate store, so you can purchase a product. And so how are we thinking about all of those different syncs and links, if you will? Those are the things that I had to wrap my mind around. And so having a technical lead that can explain that to you and explain why this kind of technology, A, works for your product, B, easy to pick up, easy for someone else to pick up. Let's say that your developer, you and your developer have a falling out and they have created code that's just so complex, no other developer can jump in and pick up where they left off. That's a problem. So being able to make sure that you are, have a language that everyone understands. So another example, when we started TresseNoire with the online, the beauty booking app, we used a language called YII. And no one else knew how the hell to use Yi but these developers. And so essentially, everyone was on Ruby on Rails, they were on Python, they were using all these other languages. And when I would say, hey, well, our site is currently on Yi, can you pick up where he left off? They were like, I've never even heard of that before. So, and I mean, over time, you do find more Yi developers. There's not necessarily anything wrong with Yi. It's just a matter of, right, like it's just a matter of just like knowing that system or knowing that language. But it hampered us in a humongous way, like huge. When we were first now starting out, we didn't have interns that knew Yi that could come in and jump in. We didn't have other people that we could get that were inexpensive. So just knowing that those are some of the questions that you might want to ask in the beginning is really, really important, because once you do choose a platform, you do kind of get locked into it, unless you want to scrap everything, start all over from scratch with a new language or a new system. So these are some of the pitfalls. I'm sure there's more if I think about it, but I would definitely say those are a few of the questions to ask.
Absolutely. I see Glenn just put in the chat that there's something like 2,000 languages out there.
I believe that.
Yeah,
I believe that.
Yeah. And I've only heard of a fraction of them. So, and it's always a difficult thing to navigate.
Yes.
I'm gonna pause there for a moment, turn to the audience and encourage them to put any questions that you have for Regina into the chat. We're always happy to take the questions from the audience. I will ask you to turn on your camera and ask the questions yourself if you have one. If you're not comfortable with that, absolutely fine. Just put it in the chat and we will get that question asked. But while we're waiting for some questions to come through, Regina, I'm sure there were resources that you looked to while you were trying to educate yourself on the technical side of building a tech product. So can you share what some of those resources are for especially non-technical founders who are entering this for the first time?
So I will say, thankfully, I attended quite a few technical conferences when I was starting out. So Project Entrepreneur was a 2-day summit sponsored by UBS, meant to support, women tech founders. And it was actually at that conference, they had the most amazing workshop on, technology for non-technical founders. So I did refer, and if I can find it, I will share it. It was the best PowerPoint presentation that like broke down what is a tech stack, like, your database, your operating system, your, the languages that are used. And I'm still learning. So let me also like throw this very big caveat out there. But I think that workshop was really like the key to me saying, oh, wow, A, this is something that I really, really don't know about. And B, I need to be a lot smarter on at least asking the questions. I may not have the answers, or, I may not necessarily be knowledgeable on what all the options are, but I think for me, it was more about making sure that I at least know and I'm aware of the fact that languages matter, and that tech stacks matter, and that if you are presented with a recommendation for developing your app on this particular platform, then you need to be asking the questions why this combination of platforms versus another combination. I also think AWS does a good job they have like tons of resources on their sites about choose. Of course, they're going to lean towards AWS, but at least like they do a really good job in kind of laying out why AWS is a really good provider in layman's terms. I think the problem that I've found is there aren't a lot of resources because it ends up sounding like way too techy. And for someone who isn't as familiar with it, you still may come away thinking like, huh, like what? So I would probably point to like AWS and Google Cloud. I mean, of course, I am on the cloud or Google Cloud products. And they actually do a pretty good job. And they have a ton of resources for founders, a ton of resources for early stage, startup founders. They do a good job with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to echo that. So AWS, fantastic list of resources. Google, fantastic list of resources. And, Google launched pre-COVID a Grow with Google physical space that facilitated workshops about Google products and how to build small businesses and launch your products using Google products. I was a huge fan of that, and they've moved them to virtual workshops and clinics. And so they do an excellent job of bridging that gap between like, how do you, we have these great products. Are you using them to the fullest? And do you understand how they work? So I will definitely echo that you should, whatever the product is, you can definitely find their resources. And a lot of time you can also connect with the person, right? Like they definitely will connect you to an individual to help walk you through what that is. So really fantastic advice there. I see we have a question from Glenn. Oh, he had a question about using offshore development. Glenn, do you want to come on camera quickly?
So hey everybody, hopefully you can hear me. I'm kind of in an incognito mode.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on offshore. I know a lot of startups use offshore development. Sometimes it's very successful, sometimes not. Just what are your thoughts?
Sure. So offshore is to your point, very, very attractive. It's very tantalizing. And if it's done correctly, it can be a huge, it can be a game changer for your business. If it's done incorrectly, it's a disaster. We did use offshore development, but it was with guidance from one of our investors. So we are a part of the Co-Venture.vc platform portfolio. And in the very beginning, they offered their dev team and like we had a fractional CTO, if you will, that literally led the entire process. So, we gave them the user requirements, we gave them the technical requirements, but then we had someone that was managing the offshore team. If we didn't have that, we would not have used an offshore developer. And so there were, again, pros and cons to that. They chose this YE framework, as I just mentioned. And, we ended up, really being locked into that code for a much longer than we should have, because there were features and functionality that we desperately needed to add that we didn't end up having the resources to do on our own. So I think offshore dev can absolutely work, but it has to be done with someone that you can translate. You still need a translator that can translate founder jargon into the dev jargon, if you will. And finding that CTO is hard. Finding that technical lead is just not and I think, and I'm probably going off on a tangent a little bit, it was hard for me specifically because I'm working with a target customer and a market and a segment that isn't as readily familiar to, potentially familiar to lots of technical leads. So, I'm sitting here telling you that I need an app that can understand the nuances in, twist outs versus braids versus weaves and blowouts. A developer is like, I don't know how to make sure that the code or that the platform in and of itself can support the founder or support the client. And so the founder is always going to be client focused, and the dev needs to, make sure that the product works and that it's scalable, that it's fast, and that it can adapt, because we're still new, we're still figuring it out. We may need to add functionality, maybe need to remove functionality. So being able to have code that's really clean is something that either the lead or like the front end or back, more so like the back end dev really needs to make sure that actually happens. So offshore can work, it just needs to be with the right offshore resource.
No, that's great advice, and definitely there's a lot of you talked about this fractal CTO, and there's a lot of consultancies that are popping up, especially in New York, in the New York area that specialize in being that temporary CTO while you're building your product. So there's different ways of navigating that and making sure that you're positioning yourself to be successful during that experience, because it's really difficult. I mean, it's hard to work with the dev that you can be next to every day, and let alone moving into the remote situation, which I think this is where we're going to move the conversation to where you are now. But before we get there, you mentioned, you know, the nuances of building a product that's for a niche market,
Yes.
for a market that has you know, what is the difference between a weave and a blowout, and you know, needing the technical knowledge that also understand what that means, right? Like for your for the value of the customer. And so is there an educational process that you provide to the people that you work with to help bring them up to speed as to what TresseNoire is, who the client is, like what on the flip side from you learning the technical skills, how do you educate the people that you work with on the beauty and the hairstyle skills?
Great question. So, you know, I do offer, you know, kind of an overview of what the product should do. And I try to also, you know, from a development and technical perspective, it technically shouldn't matter, you know, whether you understand the various hairstyles per se, but know that these are different variables, right? So, you know that they are like completely different from each other. There's very little overlap between a client that gets this kind of product versus this kind of product. And yet it's the same person that wants those different kinds of products. So just having a mindset and an understanding that you're building a product that has, you know, it could be pets, you know, one person could want a cat and a dog and a snake and a lizard. And how are you accommodating this one client that wants all these different things? I think that is, you know, that's kind of the key is to pull it out of, you know, it's always ideal. You know, I think it would always be ideal, but unfortunately I haven't had that opportunity. Thankfully, my technical lead now, he understands a lot more than the leads that I've had in the past, but I've definitely had to work with people that had like no idea what, you know, what women of color, like what their hairstyles entailed. So you get to a point where it's not even about the style, but it's about the outcome. So making sure that I'm explaining what the outcome of this, what should this product do? And how should it help customers in the end? That is the focus. You're the technical person, figure it out. But at the end of the day, this is what should happen. And this is the experience that the customer should have. And I make sure that is crystal clear. And then they can come back and tell me, okay, here's how I'm thinking about approaching it. I think that we should have, you know, ask these questions here, you know, assign tags to these particular questions to gather the data, organize these tags in this particular way. Like, I'm like, all right, cool. That sounds about right. But by doing it this way, will we get the outcome that we're looking for? That's really how I've tried to kind of take the beauty part of it, beauty part out of it, so that I'm getting a great product regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how big is your team right now?
Small.
Okay.
Very, very small, very small. I've got a front end and a back end and a technical lead. So 3 people. That's really it. Like, and, you know,
on the business side, is it just you, or do you have
on the business side, I have a sales lead and a social media coordinator. Sales lead and a social media coordinator for now. But we are looking to expand the team next year. So we're in the process of we're interviewing for a product manager and possibly another salesperson. So we're kind of exploring some new product opportunities. And if that comes to light, then we'll definitely be adding on more people to the team.
That's awesome. That's really fantastic to hear the growth of your team. I remember when it was just you and your co-founder, kind of.
Right. Just this one right here. Right here.
No, that's really fantastic. I'm going to transition the conversation to talk a little bit about your other beautiful passion project that you have, and
yes.
the other business that you run in addition to TresseNoire, because you are just so talented and have do so much.
Thanks.
But you're also one of the co-founders of Black Women Talk Tech.
Yes.
And can you tell the audience a little bit about what Black Women Talk Tech is, and kind of how it came to be, and kind of what the goal of the organization is?
Sure. So Black Women Talk Tech is a collective of Black women tech entrepreneurs focused on building billion-dollar businesses. It was my experience in TresseNoire, having started, as I mentioned, 7 years ago, and recognizing that my journey was really challenging in finding access to the technical resources that we've been talking about, finding access to investors, and even understanding navigating this entire tech ecosystem. I ended up connecting with two other women that had the exact same story, the exact same challenges. And so we said, how can we, if we're not getting a seat at the table, how do we create our own table, essentially? And how can we find partners to help us advance this effort? Because the technology was strong, the innovation is strong, the business models are strong, the revenue opportunities are strong. So if we've got all of these factors, why aren't we growing? Why aren't we scaling? The fastest growing market of entrepreneurs in the country is Black women. Highest levels of education are Black women. Why if you have all these criteria set up, why aren't we moving forward? And so we had our first conference in 2017, hoped that we'd get 30 or 40 people to attend, and we had over 300 RSVPs. So we were like, oh, this actually might be something. The demand was pent up. The demand was immediate for the resources and for the connection and the experience that we were curating at these conferences. So fast forward to this year, right before the world blew up, we hosted our 4th annual conference in New York, where over 1,300 entrepreneurs, investors, engineers, technologists came to Penn Plaza, right across from Madison Square Garden, to get access to the investors, access to workshops and educational experiences to move the needle on their business. We also host a pitch competition where we gave out over, I think, around $25,000 to three founders. And then we had, our partners there as well to learn more about businesses that they could potentially invest in, that they could offer products to, or potentially recruit some of the engineers and other non-founders that were in the room. So we really focus on, education. As I mentioned, you need the tools. You have to actually have the tools in order to know kind of what those next steps are. But that also we want to promote the idea that a founder doesn't always look like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel, Jack Dorsey. I can go on and on, right? So there are other faces of a founder that are very real and very profitable, and you should get in on investing in them at the ground level before it's too late. So Black Women Talk Tech has a lot of plans for next year. In my copious amounts of spare time, I'm able to work on that organization, and we've expanded pretty significantly over the past couple of years to incorporate chapters. So we have chapters of Black Women Talk Tech in 9 cities, along with London, England is our 10th city. We also have Black Men Talk Tech. They hosted a conference. Back in October. And we look to see them hopefully, come back into in-person events by October of next year, fingers crossed. But they traditionally help support the Miami ecosystem, along with having a national conversation.
Awesome. That's so amazing. And it's been great to see that initiative grow into an organization and just see the value that you provide to the community beyond not just to Black women, but also to the New York tech ecosystem and the tech ecosystems that exist across the country and the world. Like these conversations are super important. And I know that we've had these conversations offline in different avenues ourselves, but it's really fantastic to see that, and seeing things like Backstage Capital starting to get the attention that, Arlen growing tremendously, right? Black Women Talk Tech, Harlem Capital in Harlem. It's just phenomenal to see all of this bubbling up finally into the mainstream of the tech ecosystems and facilitating the conversation, starting these conversations out. The report that Black Women Talk Tech released this year was phenomenal. The Face of a Founder report. I just want to let everybody know that if you haven't taken a look at this this report that Regina's organizations put together, definitely take a look at it. Some amazing statistics in it about what the community that Black women founders are, and just the untapped potential that exists there. It's phenomenal. It's really fantastic. So thank you so much for your work there. I'm going to take a pause quickly. I saw that Daryl raised his hand previously, so I'm going to turn it to Daryl to see if he had a question to ask.
It was a quick one. Is one thing. I was curious. I don't know if I missed it. I might have stepped away for a bit, but you were talking about marketing for your marketing. To I know personally that it's a well-needed service. Like what you have, like the coaching, different hair types. Because growing up, I always assumed like all barbers knew like all hair types. I just always assumed. But
no.
For like marketing, like did you use a certain website to see where your market is, or did you hire a marketing expert? I didn't hear that part.
You're talking about when we were exploring like different markets and determining like how we were entering into the market. Is that what your question's about?
Right. I guess like when you're starting off, like how do you I guess find if there's like an actual need, and then once you do that, how do you actually find customers? How do you find customers? Like, are you actually, are you like using a certain website to find like leads? Like, is most of your?
Okay, I think you're talking about
my background is messy, but
oh, no worries. Listen, it's fine.
Website to get like leads, or is some of it, like a lot of it, inbound? Like people are contacting you for their services. Like I would expect it would be a lot of it inbound, but like for the outbound, like how are you?
Okay, got you. No, I understand. So you're talking about like overall customer acquisition.
Right.
You know, when we, so there's, I guess, two different approaches. When we started gaining customers for our on-demand, on-location beauty booking app, we started very small. This was like friends and family. It was word of mouth. It was, you know, we would host a few hair, hair events in our homes. We had like at-home hair parties, if you will, and we would do a hair demo of a client and have the stylist, do a demo on that person, and they'd be like, oh my goodness, the stylist is great, let me book an appointment with her. So we started very, very small, and then the word of mouth, that person told another person, that person told another person, all the while building our social media following as well. So I would definitely say, once you're on social, and you've got great pictures, I wish, if I were to do it again, I would have gotten a better designer in the very beginning, especially in the beauty space. You need an amazing designer, like hands down, like the end. But, having great images, having great pictures, someone says, oh, wow, this person comes to your home. So yes, there was definitely just kind of like that initial marketing push. The messaging, getting the word out to say, hey, look, we've got this new service. We service your area, book an appointment, and then, post your picture on social, tell a friend to tell a friend. That was really our first approach. We expanded that into Google Ads. Google Ads did very, very well for us. They performed very well for us. Facebook ads. So, you're eventually, when you have enough budget, you'll add in, some sort of advertising and larger exposure kinds of tools. And then for the pivot with the new virtual beauty coach app, we already had a bunch of clients. We already had our email list. We already had our social media following. So it's really been just a matter of mining that current community, given that we're still we're still in private beta. So right now we're still like just refining a bunch of tweaks to the product, refining the algorithm, refining the actual technology. We went with a certain provider that we no longer are with anymore. So we needed to go and reconstruct a few things. So, but we already had an audience that we could test and really confirm that product market fit, which is a part of, what you're trying to do when you are, kind of in your first now starting out and you're first trying to determine, is there a market for this? Like, is there a market for a virtual beauty coach app for women of color? Like that question needs to be answered as well. And can you make money from that? I know that, we don't focus on the money too much, Andy, but long term, you gotta focus on money. So that those questions can, thankfully we can answer those questions internally because we already had, the market or the market of customers and clients that we've built over the past several years with our first product.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you
very much. Like, I took a lot of notes. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad.
Thank you, Daryl. And we'll have our contact information up as well at the end. So please feel free to reach out.
Sure.
We're wrapping up the conversation with Regina. It's been such a wonderful conversation and a chance just to reconnect with you. It's been
I know. It's always nice to see good faces.
To end the conversation, we like to end it on a positive note. So I would like to ask you, like, what's one fun thing that's happened to you this last week?
One fun thing that's happened to me, actually the fun thing that happened to me in the last week was I made banana pudding for the first time for Thanksgiving. And it came out very well, if I say so myself. It was gone in the 2 or 3 days, post Thanksgiving. And I will definitely keep that recipe. So I had definitely a few helpings myself. And the family was happy. So I would say that was a good thing that happened.
Yeah, that sounds delicious. You'll have to give me the recipe. I love banana pudding.
Oh, so good. So good. Love it. Will do.
Awesome. And then as we wrap up 2020, I'm so happy to end this series for 2020 with you as the founder spotlight. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time.
Awesome.
But what's one of the best things that's happened to you this year? I know it's been a crazy year and lots has happened all around, but what's one of the best things that's happened?
I am thankful for life. I think that, over 250,000 Americans are not with us anymore as of today. And that is a terrible, horrible, outrageous thing. And so, while I am an extrovert and I miss people like a lot, I am thankful for the new habits that I have, the new normal, that I've embraced, and knowing that my family and friends are safe. I think that's something that I'm super grateful for this year. I'm also grateful for the businesses that are still here. We have seen some pretty significant economic disaster happen for tons of businesses, and the fact that some of them are still standing just shows just how badass a lot of women founders are, a lot of entrepreneurs in general. But I'm super proud of a lot of the founders that I continue to talk to that have kept the lights on, have been able to pivot, and are getting ready for an amazing 2021. So there is still light and opportunity, and I'm super excited about that.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and it's great to see that you're still building and during all of this in 2020 and getting ready to release an amazing kick-ass product. We'll definitely have to have you back to do the demo of the finished product when it's ready for public release and out of beta. I'm always excited to see where it goes. And then you mentioned, just to quickly end things, you mentioned some new habits that you've picked up. So what are some good habits that you've picked up in this last year that's helped you keep a sane mind and a solid foundation?
So I'm telling you, I am in the kitchen so much more this year.
Awesome.
Everyone had to eat, you have to eat. And I did not realize how much I like to go out to eat. I definitely like to go out quite often. And I've gotten quite good at, cooking vegetables. So making veggies tasty and spectacular. I have a buffalo wing cauliflower that's pretty good. I do a really good roasted carrots, and I do a Parmesan asparagus. So you know, like just, I think like learning those skills and learning, you know, getting new recipes under my belt and not doing like cooking the same thing, you know, over and over and over again, has allowed me to be, you know, just to stay interested and not, you know, phone it in and order, you know, Uber Eats every single day. So I think that's something that and it's a skill that I can continue, you know, like when we can go back outside, I will. But I will still know how to cook a mean veggie plate in
That's
the future.
awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Regina, for your time today. I'm going to quickly share my screen again. Let me see if I can pull it up with our contact information. For anybody in the audience that needs to, that would like to connect with us, please feel free. There it is. And there we go. And again, thank you, Regina. We barely scratched the surface on all the topics that we could potentially.
Yes.
I thank you so much for taking the time today, for sharing yourself with us for an hour. Thank you to everybody who joined the call today, and for your wonderful questions. Please feel free to reach out. We'll look forward to seeing you in the new year, or hopefully Tuesday at the women's demo event. Some fantastic demoers. You can see Regina's pitch on our YouTube channel from last year. Always great. But feel free to reach out anytime. Thank you so much. All the best wishes during this holiday season, and thank you so much for being with us during 2020. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, evening, whatever it is.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.